Hi everyone, my name is Leanne and today I'm going to be telling you about 5 books about women from history. I am not talking historical fiction here, I am not talking biography or memoir. I am talking about books that have different women featured, so multiple women, and tell you a little bit about those women. Before I get into the recommendations, I do want to say all of these books are by white people. There's no way of me getting around that. I think it's important that I do acknowledge it. There are women of colour featured in these books, but they are all by white people. I do think as well, whenever you go into one of these books that has loads of different women and a little bit about their history and their achievements, you do need to go into it with quite a critical eye, even if it is kind of a light-hearted book. I do think you need to be aware of, like, okay, are they actually talking about any women of colour in these books? What women are they including? Are these women actually the feminist icons that the book is trying to portray them as? I think the answer is almost always no. 2 women that spring to mind that I think are so often included in these kinds of books are Margaret Thatcher and J.K. Rowling, who are not people that support women that have different lived experiences than them. And I'm sure there are people included in the books that I'm going to recommend to you today that have not been the best allies to people from different minority groups to them. The books that I'm recommending to you are not free from blame in this regard, but they are books that did teach me a lot about the different experiences of women who have come before me, women who have had similar experiences and backgrounds to me, women who have had vastly different experiences to me, and I learned a lot from reading all of these books. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's just a recommendation for reading in general. Read with a critical eye. So yes, into the books now. The first book I would like to recommend to you is Rocking the System by Siobhan Parkinson. What I love about this book is that it is a book full of Irish women. Each person included in this book has a sort of time scale of their life and significant events that happened throughout history, a biography, an illustration, and if they were a writer, for example, there would be a sample of their work. Women are so often forgotten in Irish history, and we're so often the unsung heroes of so many incredible events and achievements in Irish history. A couple of years ago, I did a video where I picked out some of my favourite women from this book. I'll leave that linked down below and in the cards if you want to hear more about this one. The next book I would like to recommend is What Would Bootika Do by E. Foley and B. Coates. This is another book that is quite similar to the concept of Rocking the System and a lot of these women from history books that we do see, in that it is a bit of a biography and an illustration that gives you a snapshot into lots of women's lives. What I do love about this book though, and what I think makes it quite unique, is that it takes kind of contemporary issues and problems that women might face and gives you a bit of inspiration for what an incredible woman from history might do in this situation, or something from their life that might inspire you to how you could best deal with this situation. So the first woman included in this book is of course Bootika, and the problem she can help you solve is sticking up for yourself. There's also Rosa Parks and Standing Up to Bullies, there's Frida Kahlo and Finding Your Style, there's Emily Dickinson and Defying FOMO, George Eliot and Not Being Hot. There are some women in this book that I'm a bit like, not quite the feminist icon that I think the book is presenting them as, but I don't think that means you can't take something from their life that is admirable. You know, there's a few British royals included in this book, and like as an Irish person, I'm like, The next book I would like to recommend is one that I read really recently, and that is Daily Rituals, Women at Work by Mason Curry. I loved reading this book just before bed because the sections in it are really, really short. I struggle with reading something that has kind of long chapters before bed because I will fall asleep. I kind of made it my daily ritual or nightly ritual picking up this book. The author wrote this book in response to the fact that he wrote a previous book on the same kind of topic, but he realized that he didn't include as many women as he should have. And this book was him rectifying that, and I think that's a fantastic thing to do. This book, like all of the books I'm talking about today, takes a look at women from history, but specifically the daily rituals that they incorporated into their routines and how that made them productive with what they were doing, either in kind of a work capacity, in a creative capacity, somewhere between the two. Some of the things I learned about in this book were things that I would like to now implement in my own life. Some of them were things where I was like, I am definitely not implementing that in my life, but they were interesting to learn about. I'm not sure how many women are included in this book in total, but there's a lot. I think probably more than any of the other books that I'm talking about today. The biographies of them are very brief. They are kind of 1 to 3 pages, I suppose. But there were so many women in this book included that I'd never heard of before, and it was great to learn about them, but also women that I had heard of before and I didn't realize kind of how their lives were structured. Next, I'm going to swerve a little bit and I'm going to recommend to you a poetry collection, and that is The World's Wife by Carol Ann Duffy. This is one of my favorite poetry collections of all time. It was one of the books that really got me into reading poetry for pleasure, and I have a real connection to it because of that. This collection is really funny, and it's one that you can kind of really enjoy without feeling the need to analyze it like you would with some poetry. Like, you definitely can, but I think it's a poetry collection that you really can just read and kind of let wash over you and enjoy it. So this collection takes really famous figures from folklore, mythology, and real life figures who are men, and then focuses on their wives. Some of these wives we have names for example, William Shakespeare's partner Anne Hathaway is included in here. Others are just Mrs. something, so like there's Mrs. Darwin in here. And there are fictitious characters in here as well, so there's Mrs. Midas, there's Queen Kong. But I did just want to include this book because it is just so fun. The final book I'm going to talk to you about, I wasn't sure really fitted the theme of this video, but I decide what goes in this video, so I'm going to recommend it. The final book I'm going to talk about is What Would the Spice Girls Do by Lauren Bravo. Now obviously this is about like a specific group of women. It's not a selection of loads of different women from kind of all over the world, but you know, they are 5 different women. I'm also reluctant to kind of call the Spice Girls women from history, but the 90s were a while ago now. And I do think the legacy of the Spice Girls was so impactful that it is kind of significant in feminist history. Now obviously I'm also very cautious to hail the Spice Girls as feminist icons, but I don't think you can deny that the kind of girl power movement that they helped shepherd in was extremely impactful. This book really takes a look at the cultural impact that the Spice Girls had, how tremendously successful they were, especially for the time where they were together. The things that they achieved as a girl band were staggering. Obviously this recommendation is a lot more specific than some of the other books I've included in this video. You do have to kind of have a specific interest in the Spice Girls, or at least like pop culture of the 90s. But I never get a chance to talk about this book, and I think it's great, so I'm including it here. I think obviously this book would make a fantastic gift as well. In fact, I think all of these books, you know, we're coming up to Christmas, or just kind of gift giving season if you're not into Christmas. Or maybe you're not watching this now, you're watching it now, but like you're watching it not when I'm uploading it, and you might just want to give someone a little gift. I'm sure we can all think of someone in our lives that is really into like women from history, and what I think is really great about giving these sorts of books as gifts for Christmas is the short sections. You know, Christmas can be really busy for people, so I think it's really useful to have a book that you can kind of read in a spare 5-10 minutes around the Christmas period. So yeah, I think these books are fantastic gifts, or fantastic for any time of the year. I would love to get some recommendations from you guys for books that are similar to these, but ones that are by women of color. Let me know if you have any recommendations at all for any books that you think I might be interested in. And if you want to find out more about the books I've spoken about today, they will be linked down below in the description as well. I hope you guys are doing well, and I will talk to you in my next video.